Dema Jimden the Shen Dashim Yanda Panzo Sanje Ribada Shasun the Orisha Banji Denchema Jivon Deve Kalojo Lana Meban Hana Menonje Damba Sanje Jimden Bejawa Shaja Tobana Chasa should the Yasu Shevo Demba Jimden and the Shen Dashim Yanda Panzo Sanje Ribada Shasun the Orisha Banji Denchema Jivon Deve Kalojo Lana Hada Menamje Demba Sanje Jumden Bejawa Shaja Chasen Chodo Jazo Shewo Demba Jumden the Shinsha Jajumba Yanda Bonzo Sanje Ribada Shazun Demba Devarisha Jidin Jamba Jivon Deva Kalo Juba Lana Hada Menamje Sanje Jumden Bejawa Shaja Toba Chasen Chodo Jazo Shewo Kanzeganyan Zowa Chadam Sajan Dina Komande Naninji Dendina Chojas, Dezeke Bajama Chawas. Nanda Gonga Shoto Suzawa, Yeji Jazo Sergio Chava Jedensum Gombo Choni Jona Chawas and Senjon Dembachime, Sendo Dawa Jona Chawas and the Jena Sebasu. Yame Tinjin Jona Chawas and Gombo Tuji Ched. 탐지 젬베 뎨마보 소노메 연대자수 디신샤마 차서 다변대자체 개뱅에 소네 제도 되는 조조와 신조조나 차서 전에 전에 라바달라라도네 신경도 바이는데 내게는 차서 네바지야 메제신게와 변소소 바자랑게 셈네 되는 산제 덴바이 까마라리 마베 유마세 바주 Melamboda Genda Bondishanum Detrata Sonum Dia Covantum Negenda de Gada Nada Shivel Siveson and Joan Joveration.
The teacher, the blessed one holy, full destroy, completely perfected, fully awakened be, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, Lord of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, more of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one of you, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, know of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When those supreme humans, your opponent is there, you paced out 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world, to you who arise and I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like golden light, flame that blazes in the 3 words, winner of the best, to you I prostrate. With the spring sides, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit and the qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to lessness I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path that's a sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path of liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community in virtue I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Strong mirage, a flame of a lamp, illusion, a drop of dew or bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain miracle of all seeing, subdue the flow of thoughts, and be delivered from motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanji Shano Zoji Shonama Chanju Papa Dandi Dagi Jinzo Jebe Sonam Ji and Rola Pinche Sanji Shano Zoji Shonama Chanju Papa Dagi Jinzo Jebe Sonam Ji and Rola Pinche Sanji Shano Zoji Shonama Chanju Papa Dandi Dagi Jinzo Jebe Sonam Ji and Rola Pinche Sanji
I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkaphas. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkaphas. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Lama Tsongkaphas. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tamche Jemala Cha Zonon Deda Sanje Jemden Deyan Dishen Wanda Jema Yada Zobe Sanje Riba Da Shazon Dema Devare Sheban Jeden Jema Lana Meba Hada Menan Jema Sanje Jemden Deya So Dishen Sheba Dene Sonan Tabi Jutum Give Zawa Namachu Meseba Severa Dojema Sonam Jedera Nishi Beje Samonam Jedeba Senam Jemedo Jeba Jiyurema Tona Midumba Tebe Meba Namang Braga Shero Sigim Tona Ziba Sinjetam Jejutemba Chanju was in Banam Jabo Pabe Kazana Jebo Yangana de Jedo Tebe Ishipado Meba Poba Samje Mejo Sonamrata Yani Kujeta Chome Kutsumba Meba Debata Suda Benyama Mago Sume Vata Dumena Pumbota Kamnanda Medemba Jejananda Devana Machine Yonzo Dua Sivan Letuba Chuvole Giva Yishi Yonzo Deva Majumba Sanje Jumne Yishina Neva Nyangana Deva Medeva Yada Vanija Tala Simja Tumjala Sibe Sama Shubate Didane Sanje Jumne Jukuchi Yunda Yanda Tabation Tenso was Sindrus of Mandeva, Yonzo Taba, Yonzo Chama, Yanta, Neme. Tishaba Meva, Nevadema, Deton, Tenyo, Kevan, Sozora, Jumlendi, Lavasun, Chunduana, Lavato, Yavacho, Zobe Chajun, Medumba, Devada. Temba Yuva, Tebachi Lugin, and Lavachu, Tonguju, Tumaju, Tamaja, Charge of the So then you bitch in your so Joanju, but you men as you go no one Jimen as you were Chambo. Kangi at the engine and Joanju, Gawam, Jim, but Chabam, woman. Tade de Mendy, Giovanni Jishi, and Zobe Sanjaman. Tambata Charles. So page, I think 200. So page 200, refuting cause and effect are identical in nature, is it? So so this has three parts: refuting the cause, refuting using the consequences that seed and the sprout would not have distinct shape and so on. Refuting the response aimed at rebutting the objections. Refuting, number three is refuting using the consequences that in both situations is so perceptibly or lack therefore would be the same. So, as the Samkhya school believes that I think every entity is the nature of one substance. So, there's no sure what is that kind of primal, the prime substance. So, who believes in the creator? This is the primary substance. Is so one of the essence of the Bhagavan. So Bhagavan, part of the Bhagavan, who creates the natures, right? And then create the Samkhya school who does not accept the creators is a primary substance. It's just universally or generally this exist. That kind of the function of the primary substance to create object for the for the perceptions, like eye to the colors and nose to the smell. So it's all provided or created or produced by the prime substance. So because of everything is arise from the prime substance, therefore even the seed, the body sprout, in the nature of the by natures, they are all same. They are all same. Barley seed or the sprout. So, so this is what they think is. So refuting here, refuting using the consequences that seed and the sprout will not have distinct shape and so on. If the seed and sprout are by nature, they are one or they are same, so these two should not have a distinct shape and so on, and the taste, the colors, potencies, and the ripen effects. So then the Chandrakirti says, for you then there cannot exist a sprout distinct from the seed that causes it in the shape and color, the taste, potency, and the ripen effects. There are other flaws as well. For you, the Samkhya, then there cannot exist sprout distinct from the seed that causes it. In the shape such as long and short, the color like green and yellow, and so on, taste like sweet or the sour, so on, the potency, and the ripen effects. This is because you make no distinction at all between the reality or the nature of the seed and that of the sprout. So by nature, seed and the sprout become same or they are identical. There's a lot of, it may go against the reality. So given all these undesired consequences, furthermore, given that we do not perceive them as a being not distinct. So the reality of these two, sprout and the seed, cannot be identical in all respect. In this way, the Chandrakirti throws to his Samkhya opponents the reverse of the consequences. There is, however, the great difference between throwing the reverse consequences and throwing the reverse are consequences that contains autonomous syllogism. So by saying that, Chandrakirti is saying, if the seed and the sprout, by nature they are same, and then there should not be, as a consequence, there should not be any distinct shape, color, potency, right? So by throwing the consequences, so it's just simply throwing the consequences means you will kind of, you're pushed to accept that there is no distinct shape between seed and sprout. There is no, distinct color in the seed and sprout, because by nature they are same. So by throwing the consequences, now some of the school of thought within the Buddhist schools, so when you throw the consequences, the opposite you have to accept, right? So, and the Lama Tsongkapha says that, so this is not really throwing the consequences and the consequences, reverse consequences, and the reverse consequence that contains the syllogism is two different things. Like for example, there's the Sankhya, and they believe the sound, the Om sound, everything, all sound is, ultimately the nature of the Om, right? Om. So Om is this Om sound is permanent. It is just in this exists in the space. So now the Buddhists, they says, they throw the consequences, syllogism consequences, saying that, so then sound should not be a product. Sound should not be being produced by the cosmic conditions, because it is a permanent. So no permanent has produced by the cosmic conditions. So by throwing the consequences, the reverse consequences coming back, sound is impermanent in my school of thought. Right? I accept sound is impermanent. So if you don't accept the sound as impermanent, and opposite you accept, or you believe that sound is permanent, so then you will end up, you're pushed to accept the sound is not produced by the cosmic conditions. So, and then if the sound is not produced by the cosmic conditions, every sound, so can you speak without moving your mouth, without kind of air in the lung, right? So that's the reverse consequences, which contains syllogisms, opposite. So,
Geshe, what does the term? This is a very difficult sentence for me to deconstruct. This last sentence. However, there's a difference with throwing the reverse of the consequence. Mm-hmm. The reverse of the consequence, I'm not sure what that refers to in this thing about whether a primordial sound exists. So first, I don't understand what that first phrase means, throwing the reverse of the consequence. And then I don't understand the second part. There's a difference between that and throwing a reverse of a consequence that contains an autonomous syllogism. I mean, I don't even understand that phrase, autonomous syllogism. So I'm getting all lost in the words here, and I can't deconstruct the meaning.
So that's what I'm trying to explain. Yeah. So I'm trying to say in the lower school of thought, like a medieval school, medieval autonomous school, Chandrakirti school, minority school, they all believe that syllogisms, like like pot as a subject, it is impermanent as a predicate, and is being produced from the cosmic conditions, reasoning. So this is the syllogistic reasoning. So syllogistic reasoning, which means now the lower school of thought, they all agree this the reason, the
being produced from the cosmic conditions by itself, proving, right? Proving anything that is produced from the cosmic condition has to be impermanent, right? So the way it proves is not because you are you are agreeing as a byproduct. So rather, because the things by themselves being produced from cosmic condition is proving themselves as impermanent. So that is called autonomous syllogism. So the Prasangika school has a little bit difference. Prasangika school says things do not have any identity by themselves. How can things produce themselves as the impermanent or produce negate permanent? Things do not do that by themselves. So other than except the Prasangika school, all says that the tables being produced from cosmic condition itself is the one or condition that producing a establishing itself is impermanent. So by itself. So there's autonomous syllogism means that reason is the reason by itself, characterizing or the attributions. So the syllogism, autonomous syllogism means that this is the one of the part. Now the throwing consequences, throwing reverse consequences. Throwing reverse consequences means, which means you are not accepting it, and then I'm going to push you to accept it. You have no option left, right? Although you don't want to accept, but you are you have no option left. So other than accepting it. So this is called reverse consequences. So the reverse consequences here at the Samkhya school, they're saying you are you are pushed to think or accept this barley seed and sprout. There is no distinctive color, there is no distinctive shape, there is no distinctive taste and the potency, any changes in effect. So Samkhya school, they don't accept that. So Samkhya school say, I know, with my eye, I saw the seed, the size of the seed, size of the sprout, color of the seed, color of the all separate. They are different. So the Prasangika school says, now it is the different, but you have to say they are no different. Because you have already constitute, or you are already establishing that the seed and the sprout by nature they are same. Anything that by nature they're same, there is no distinct color, the shape, right? It's possible. So it's reverse consequences. Throwing the reverse consequences means that. So you are not accepting it, but you are forced to accept it, right? So, and then the reverse consequences, throwing reverse consequences that contains the syllogism, autonomous syllogisms. So the Prasangika school, yes, there is the, there is there's the way of throwing the reverse consequences, but we don't accept the reverse consequences that contains autonomous syllogisms, because we don't accept autonomous reasoning. Right? So autonomous reasoning is not accept. So it's because table being produced in cosmic condition, that very characteristic of the table is not proving itself as impermanent. It's not proving itself. So it is kind of establishment of the constitute means for the mind. When the mind understands this is being produced in cosmic conditions, and mind also integrate, therefore it is impermanent. Not the table says, hey, do you see I being produced? Now you should accept me as impermanent. No, the table is not any, there's no kind of, indications, or table is not, introduce yourself, introducing itself to the mind, I'm impermanent. So the autonomous syllogism is accepted most of the Buddhist school of thought. So only the Prasangika schools. So that's called Rangjupa. Rangjupa. Yeah, the throwing reverse consequences. Reverse consequences. You accept the reversed, and you are forced to, to agree on something you don't want to.
I'm beginning to think I'm a secret Samkhya here, because I thought we had concluded in the first chapter of the Ornament of Realization that we could not even prove production, and now you're saying, I thought I heard you say make a sentence that we can't say that seed and sprout have a form, they have a color. I mean, it seems to me they definitely have a form. At least that's what our eyes tell us. And I thought we had dismissed that production even occurred except as a fabrication of mind, that we couldn't determine that sprout came from seed other than by observation and our mental fabrication that seed had turned into a sprout, and that they weren't one and they weren't different, that both those things applied. There was a series of contradictory statements. They were neither one or different. And now I seem to be hearing you say something different, somewhat different than this, that we can't say that almost like we're regarding them as one, but we can't see them as having an inherent form or color. I must be missing something here. I must be distorting something you're saying, because I'm having a lot of difficulty putting these things together. We can't say they're one. We can't say they have the same essence, but they sure as heck appear, and I'll emphasize the word appear, to have their own form. And that form it's not permanent form, because they're going through constant change as a seed is growing and the seed is dying and the sprout is growing and so forth. But how can we make a statement, number one, about production here, and number two, that they have no, I mean, yes, you can say there's no ultimate or permanent form, but there is the appearance of form. And somehow I feel like my body has been tied up in all kinds of weird knots here. My mind and my body have been tied up and I don't know how to untie it.
I think that's really good. You're taking medicine. So its logic is working, but it's not completing his kind of, hasn't complete yet. It's just coming into your mind. So, yeah, so here I think it's very simple here. The kind of here the Nagarjuna or the Chandrakirti is laying out the reasonings. It's very, very simple because here they say the seed and the sprout has a different shape, different color, different taste. So there are, in terms of the color, smell, taste, they're different. So, so this is kind of, because of their, they're different in the terms of the color, smell, taste, and taste and the potency. So therefore, they are not same. You cannot prove the seed and sprout by nature they are identical. By nature they are same. So there's Samkhya school in the Chandrakirti saying, Samkhya school, you also understand the color, seed and sprout in terms of color and smell, color, taste, potency are the different. But you still think that you are, propounding that. So by nature, the seed and the sprout are the same. So if you accept that by nature they are same, you should give up saying there's a difference, right, in the color, taste, potency. If you accept there's a different color in the seed and the sprout, different shape in the seed and the sprout, different potency in the seed and the sprout, and again you should give up. If you know that, then you should give up that by nature they're same. This cannot to the view or to kind of understanding is the contradict. So the Chandrakirti is saying, if you continuously believing the seed and the sprout by nature same, and you have kind of you should give up the difference, kind of different colors, different taste, different shape in the seed and sprout. So saying you have to say, I don't believe, I don't accept. There's a difference between seed and sprout, has a different color, different taste, like that. So that's the reverse consequences. That's called the reverse consequences. You say, now which one you want to believe? That's it. If you want to believe by nature the seed and sprout same, and you should give up the saying there is a seed and sprout has a different color and shape. If you accept and agree on it, yes, there is a seed and sprout has a different color and different shape, and then you should give up saying these are by nature they are same. That's the reverse consequences, right? So the other school of thought, they also have the reverse consequences, throwing the reverse consequences. They always think that the reverse consequences means throwing reverse consequences to Samkhya means the opposite of the reverse consequences you should accept. So saying, for example, if this Buddhist arguing with the Samkhya school who kind of believe the sound is by nature is permanent because it's the nature of the space. So then Buddhists throw the reverse consequences. Then the sound should not be a product. That is the reverse consequence, throwing sound should not be a product, right? Because sound is by nature is a space, space is a permanent. So now reverse consequence, the opposite side of that, the Buddhists accept, right? Sound is a product. So they accept sound is product, and to the Samkhya they're throwing should not be a product. So the opposite, that's you accept. And the Prasangika school says, when you throw the reverse consequences, and opposite is not necessarily you have to accept. So, if there's intrinsic natures, so for example, if there's intrinsic natures, then things should be born from itself and others, or both, or without a cause. So the Prasangika schools, if things are intrinsically exist, then things should born from itself and other and both. So when you throw the reverse consequence of things should be born from itself, so the opposite of that is not itself, the others, born from others. So the Prasangika school not accepting the opposite of that. So because there is nothing arising from itself, nothing born from others. So this is called Prasangika school. They use the term Chandrakirti, this kind of syllogistic or the consequentialist reasoning that what do you call Chandra means is based on the others, the view, or others, the acceptance. What are the examples?
When you say it's based on others' acceptance, but you're arguing against that acceptance as being rational, though, right? As having
it has to be rational. But so when you throw the reverse consequences, the opposite is not necessarily accepted in your school of thought, in the Prasangika school. And the other
so you're just so you're just using it to undermine their argument. It doesn't mean you accept what you're saying, but you're using it to undermine their argument, and I'm not quite getting it.
Maybe I may need some help. So here so right now we are trying to understand making a differentiate between the throwing reverse consequences and the throwing reverse consequences that contains the autonomous syllogisms. So I've already said that the autonomous syllogisms, there is a syllogism, but no autonomous syllogisms in Prasangika school. So the reverse consequences means, for example, in the Prasangika school, this is also, for example, sprout. The sprout should be born from itself because the sprout exists intrinsically. Right? Now here, what we are throwing the reverse consequences is sprout is born from itself. So now what is the opposite of that? Sprout is the opposite of sprouts being born from itself is the opposite, the flip side of that, born from others. Right? So the Prasangika school don't accept, is not agreeing a sprout is born from itself sprouts born from others, but still they can throw the reverse consequences.
Similar to affirmative and non-affirmative innovation.
Yeah. So sometimes we say, Prasangic school, it says, if there is a rising of the sprout as a futures that is substantially exist. So there's a rising of the sprout, which means there is a sprout that not yet arisen, but it is the sprout. So the Prasangic school, that means you have to accept there is unborn sons which is being raised himself by his own wealth. So the reverse consequence, throwing the reverse consequences of that. So which means Prasangic school, there a rising of the sprout means in the nature of the a state of futures, there is no sprout that waiting to be arisen. So if the arising of the sprout is the sprout and not yet born, you have to say is a sprout but not born. So the unborn sprout is there, right? So if the unborn sprout can have any activity to be arising, to be coming, so in the Prasangic school say, and then unborn son have some kind of activity raising himself, and he has his own cultivated wealth. So this whole, Prasangic school, this is kind of, most of their logic is throwing the consequences. So by throwing the reverse consequences, the other opponents, they find the contradictions. They find, it's not comfortable with what they are, what kind of, comfortable, not comfortable with their own logics. So then they start thinking, finding why, right? So then they may kind of, find get the access to kind of, finding the rational thinking. And they may find the valid reasoning, and that helps. So if you don't throw the consequences, right? So it's if you don't throw the reverse consequences, there's no changes in others. It's only cause the conflict, fighting, argument, quarreling. So if you throw the reverse consequences, first, you are putting them in confused and contradictions, uncomfortable. So uncomfortable with their own reasonings. So then there is some kind of, the possible of coming out from their, irrational thinkings. Yeah. I don't know.
So this is kind of a form of persuasion that's not making a dogmatic statement as such, but trying to show the illogic of their position. And this is what we're referring to throwing reverse consequences. Because then it seems if we, I can't help but think of this phrase, throwing reverse consequences. How about throwing non-reverse consequences? If we're throwing non-reverse consequences, that I suppose means we're supporting their reasoning. I guess that's what that statement would mean. We're actually agreeing with their reasoning. Whereas when we use, I'm trying to understand the language. So when it just means we are challenging the logic of their position, basically.
Reverse consequences, reverse consequences means you are forced to accept something that you don't believe. So that's reverse consequences. You believe in the reverse, but you are forced to agree on something you don't want to believe. So the Samkhya school, they don't want to say there is the difference in the color and the color of the seed and sprout, shape of the seed and sprout, because they already know. It's obvious, the evidence. So they don't want to, but you are forced to accept that opposite side. So although I understand, I see the difference, in the color, shape within the seed and sprout, right? But because you accept, or you kind of you believe that by nature they are same, identical. So therefore, even though you don't want, but you are forced to accept. So that is called reverse consequences. So giving all the undesired consequences, the furthermost, given that we do not perceive them as being not distinct, the realities of these two sprout in its seed cannot be identical in all respect. In this way, the Chandrakirti throw to his Samkhya opponents the reverse consequences. There is, however, a great difference between throwing the reverse consequences and throwing a reverse consequence that contains an autonomous syllogisms. Potency here refer to such properties as that of medicines against hemorrhoid, so which clears away the element of the moment it comes into the contact with the body. So there's some kind of medicines that you don't have to eat it, right? So being closer to it, being touched, it can cure or it can heal this some illness. And there is some medicinal essence that permit. Yeah. So surrounding when hang in air. So there's this, I don't know really. Yeah. So only those what do you call it? The fiction stories. So there are some. There's a story in Tibet. So one guy, he was just kind of herding the sheep. So one day he was just lying on the grass. He was just picking the grass and just putting his mouth. He found something strange grass, and he put it in mouth. So he can see all the God beings. So, and then there's this, and if you find, and there's this, it's a story, like the crow nest, the bird. So some people find there's stick that collected by the crow, and if some of the stick, if you find this can be used to hide yourself, just holding what no one can see. So, so there's a lot of this kind of maybe I can't really kind of come with any sense. There's a medicinal essence, but just surrounding.
It sounds like LSD or perfume or asthma medicine. You breathe it and it changes your condition. Or you take a psychedelic mushroom and you see the gods. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, maybe that's the marijuana. So long.
Much stronger than marijuana, much stronger.
So I don't know. This is really kind of, the rapid effects are the changes effect in the result owing to the variable conditions. For example, when Indians as a gooseberry and the long pepper trees, and their like are nourished with milk, so their fruits acquires as a sweet taste. Normally, these berries are very sour, so they use as a medicine. And then the long peppers, as they have very kind of bitterness, there's some bread. But in old time, some rich family, so they have this gooseberry tree, instead of water, they put milk. So they continuously pouring the milk to the tree for, maybe months and years. And then those berries, it tastes very sweet. So the ripening effect is changed by another corporate conditions. Although by nature it is sour, but it can be changed by adding other kind of additional costs. So this whole kind of saying that the seed and the sprout are not identical, they are not same. Which means the seed is something that is, so it having seeds of the seed and it produces the sprout means by nature, this very sprout cannot be identical with the seed that already ceased to exist. So, because the seed is something that disappears and becomes non-existing. And how can this very manifestation of the sprout, as by nature, it is still identical with the seed that's already died out? So to be identical, seed has to exist with the sprout. If and also when the seed is not really exist, invisible during the sprout, and the sprout, since the sprout is identical with the seed, and the sprout also another reverse consequence is you should also accept sprout is also invisible. During the sprout invisible because this very sprout is identical with the seed that already ceased to exist, so no longer visible. So this sprout is identical with the seed that is invisible. So which means now he is saying the everything's when they transform, the past ceased, future manifest. The future, the manifest, cannot be identical with the prior conditions that are already being ceased. So I think what they want to suggest by insistingly establishing everything is by nature same, because they want to say this all created by one prime substance, which is part of the Bhagavan. So in that nature of the Bhagavan, and everything is same. So now the confusion belongs to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan sees everything is same, we see is different. So if our perspective is real and Bhagavan has wrong perception, if the Bhagavan is the right perceptions, we are all wrong. So,
how does Bhagavan translate to English? What is the translation of English?
I don't know. There's no literally translations. So far I found. Sometimes they use Lord, or sometimes there's Bhagavan as the God, or sometimes a Lord. So Sanskrit word, sometimes the Indian, some of master this is, what do you call ininterpretable kind of, the ininterpretable words, the Sanskrits. So many of the Indian people, some of the master, they says that. So if someone tried to interpret that Sanskrit word, so they don't really kind of catches the essence of what the word is really kind of implying, the meaning. Meaning is always become unstable when you translate the Sanskrit to the other language. So it seems like Buddha used in the kind of people who speak Hindi. So when someone said the Buddha, so if the person is trying to but because he's kind of his way of so way of speaking or his intentions, and then from that you say if he continues using the Buddha means he is referring to the the quality of the Buddha. Now if someone poetries they use the Buddha, so it means now he is talking about just kind of complete knowledge. So and sometimes the poetry they use with in the Sanskrit word, and then when the flowers is bloomed, and they had used sometimes the Buddha. So just the Buddha, the term is just without any without any kind of categorized in particular parts. So it's always says, oh, Buddha has to be always Shakyamuni or any kind of enlightened being. So then the word, the purpose of the word is kind of there's some kind of missing. So this can be universal, and you can say sometimes we refer to the person who is very knowledgeable, kind of Buddhiman. Buddhiman means he's very knowledgeable. Buddhiman. I don't. So yes, I heard this. Many Indian masters they use because they. So this is kind of preservation of all Sanskrit traditions. So people always says these Sanskrit words are not interpretable. If you interpret in your language, if you interpret it with your cultures, your emotional, it's always miss the meaning.
Well, it sounds like even in Sanskrit, it's a moving target. that people can't agree because it's used in different ways and different contexts, and you can't pin it down to a single context. Maybe you can pin it down to multiple contexts, each with their own kind of meaning, not the same as the other context. And so you have to almost be born into the culture to know which context it's being used in.
So you have to be, you have to be land in particular cultures to understand how they use. For example, even in English, enlightenment, enlightened, enlightening. So they use many, it can go with all this different kind of, sentence. So if someone explained to you, and you say, "Oh, that's very enlightening," right? So, so like it was like if someone kind of if someone do the kind of the physical can exercise flipping, right? And people says to pray to give compliments. That was very sick. So sometimes sick can be good, right? So that was very, very seriously sick. So we are not sure. So we cannot pin down all the fabrications. So just leave the fabrication, just let it fly, drifting in mind. So when you need it, you just bring it and try to make the sense. So otherwise, you just let it go. So, my understanding, the bhaga is always like mirrored, like mirrored all collective virtues. The Bhagavan means, it's a field. It's a field of the virtues mirrored. So, who worship to him, you get the merits. And he is the source. He is the kind of origin. He is the kind of the field of the merits. So even in there's a Buddhas, they use this Jimba means here the generosities, the perfect field for the generosities. So which means it can be interpreted in both ways. Perfect field of the practice with generosity, which means if you offer like water, the flowers, the incense towards the Buddha. So the Buddha is the very, the perfect field for cultivating the merits. And it can also interpret that he is the one, is the result of the perfect generosity. So the Buddha is the result of the perfecting generosity, and he is the object, he is the field that you can cultivate for generosity. Right. So so the conventionally and mundanely giving, so we call giving, give something to get something, right? And gives things to make him work for you, or giving to him to not to harm to you. So this giving is not with Buddha. So Buddha, so they say, I only want dark chocolate. I don't want white chocolate. Buddha never said that, right? So Buddha is the perfect field for any kind of things that you like and you can offer by offering. It's, no matter it's small or big or expensive or inexpensive. So your intentions is a positive. Your intentions is faithful, and offer just one single, candy can cultivate the tremendous amount of the merit. So is the Bhagavan is the perfect field of for the merit or to cultivating the merit. So the Bhagavans. So Bhaga, sometimes Bhage. So Bhage is more like just the quality is your, what do you call it? Yeah. Sometimes people use in English many times luck, right? Successful, luck, something like that. So in that sentence, in old time, they refer to the mother of the family. Hey, Bhagavan. Right. So Bhagis. So she is the source. Right? She is the source, or she is the main cause that kind of, that ties up all the families. So Bhage, you are successful of the family, your luck of the family is because of her. Her compassion.
It sounds very simple. Sounds very similar to the Western meaning.
Yeah.
Fortune.
Yeah.
Which I think it came from the goddess Fortuna.
Yeah.
I think it came from a goddess Fortuna. So she's, I don't know, I'm not saying it's an exact parallel. But
so, yeah, from tomorrow you can refer May. Hey, Fortuna. Hey, Fortuna of family.
I have to do that whether she feeds me or she hits me over the head with an iron pot.
I think first you have to explain to her so what Fortuna means. So yeah, that's the Bhagavans. I think during the Buddha judgment it seems like when you read the Vinaya text, so Vinaya sutras, so the bhikshus who kind of with the Buddha, so they have kind of they tends to refer the Buddha, the Tathagat, right? Tathagats. And then the Brahmins who has kind of when they refer to the Buddha, so Brahmin they comes for his Buddha's teaching, and they receive all kinds of teaching from the Buddha. So because of their background, their cultures, they refer to the Buddha, hey Bhagavan. They always refer to the Buddha as Bhagavan. So the bhikshu, the Shariputra, Mohaputra, they always say Tathagat. So you see, they, how they really kind of, from their own perspective, or their own way of, kind of, seeing or understanding of the reality, they create the culture. They also prefer this term is more suitable. This term is not really, it's not, seems to be suitable. Because they've been telling before they met the Buddha, they all used the Bhagavan. This term is too familiar with creators, so they'd rather not use the Bhagavan, Tathagats. So yeah, so you cannot pin with one term. This has to be done for this particular, So yeah, rabbin they change the effects owing the trees, and they're like nourished with milk. Refuting the response aimed at rebutting the objections. It is through the shunning its prior reality that a thing turns into another things. how then can the two be identical? Like the milk turning into yogurt due to other additional conditions, substance that added in the milk, that turn the milk to the yogurt. So the yogurt, once the yogurt is become, and then the prior reality of the milk is no longer existing at the time of the yogurt. So how can this yogurt is by nature is identical with previous the quality of the milk? So the nature of the yogurt, the taste of the yogurt are all different from the previous kind of the state of the color and the taste of the milk. So milk has to be ceased to exist in order for yogurt to manifest. So the very yogurt, when it's manifest, so the milk has already ceased to exist. So how can something that is already ceased to exist and that is identical with one that exists in the present time? Right. So they continuously they're saying that this is the Chandrakirti, his own kind of his way of reasoning out to saying seed and sprout by nature they are not identical, they are not same. So, but still, I think even in the English term, that many times people have always they refer like trees and waters and mountains. They always it's natures. So, I believe this kind of this term that culture of referring the water, the mountains, the trees. In what sense you're saying these natures, right? And something that you produce or you have tomato plants in your room or any bonsai tree, right? Bonsai. So you don't really refer this is natures. And why you say nature has to be out there in the mountain? So the nature is the term in the Hindi and non-Buddhist schools. The long term they're using that. Prakriti. So there's something to do with the religiously kind of originated. So the God made is not God made. So if you're referring the God made is only in the mountain, so then yourself is not the God made. So then, which means you are not made by God. So your city is not made by God. Or outside of the city, or those grasses, those trees, those animals. These are nature. These are nature because they don't have passport. So we have passport. We have ID, right? The driving license. So we are not nature. So it's kind of the origin is kind of rooted into the religious kind of thinking. So refuting the response aimed at so if it is through the shunning its prior reality that a thing turns into the other things. So how then can the two be identical? So you might assert by abandoning the seed stage that changes into the different state, namely that of the sprout. The seed and the sprout are merely different stage. Seed itself become the sprout. So response, now if it is through the shunning its prior stage the stage of the reality of that seed, it turns into the stage that is another thing. So the reality of the sprout in that case, how then can it be correct to assert that the two are identical? So, such that nature of the seed is also very nature of the sprout. For according to you, the reality at the stage is reality of the things itself. And apart from that reality, there is no other things. So during the sprout, seed is no longer existing. So no other things. That is the separate. Therefore, the thesis that reality of the seed and the sprout are not distinct at all in any respect is undermined. So that means now this is totally deflated. That is not making sense. So if the thought occurred, although the shape and so forth of the seed and the sprout are distinct, they are not distinct with respect to their substance. So there is no contradictions in the thesis of self-arising. These two would be untenable. So this is not particularly Vaibhashika within the Buddhist school. Vaibhashika school says, when the yogurt turned the milk turned into yogurt, the color, the substance of the color is to remain same. That very color with milk is still existing with yogurt. So here, if the milk, every part of the molecule of milk has transformed and ceased to exist, what is the color left from the milk to turn into the during this yogurt? So their substances. So there is no contradiction in this region. For without apprehending the shape and so on, one cannot apprehend the seed and the sprout, even in terms of their substance. Refuting using the consequences that is in the both situations, it was a perceptibility or lack thereof would be the same. So this can be applied, this life and the previous lives. So conceptually, we say, yes, I am, come from the past life to the present. I still goes to the next life. So if you go a little bit more specific, you as a, human being, that very as the with this very life. So does this human being is existing in the past, in my past life? So we say, no, this very present life, this very, the person, this very in this present is not there in the past. Right? So because of the very person has previous life and previous, the person of the previous life, when they died, when that ceased, when they're dead, and this life manifest, is the continuity of the past life. It's still this is the, under the force of karma that is committed in the past. But still, this very new person is not exactly that existing in the past. The past is not continuously existing in the present. The present will not be exactly existing or the remaining in the next life. But the continuity, the force, the habit, and then, the emotions, potencies, this all goes right to the continuing for the, from the continuities. So there is no one thing or any part of shape or color or the size of any substance or any characters, the potentials. Nothing is standing still. So prior ceased, the past ceased, and the present manifests. Present ceased, future manifest. So, which is proving that there is no Atma, that independent I, that always remaining without being changed, constantly existing from the past life to this life to the next life. So this thick Atma is the concept, is because the self of the person is the independent and it is the permanent. So this self or Atma, which is independent and permanent, it cannot be changed, it cannot be disintegrated by how many times, disintegrate of the body, how many times changes your emotional view. This self always remain independent. So now the question is, so far, all this life, your body has changed, your emotional changing, your desire changing, your view changing, your culture changing, everything changing, but something not changed is I. So how can you hope this may change by connecting to the Bhagavan? So Bhagavan almost will give up because you cannot change all this life. You did so many, virtuous activities, non-virtuous activities, never affected on the Atma. How can I suddenly now change you to become the Bhagavan, to enter in my heaven realm? So this is really kind of big questions. Something unchangeable, hoping or expecting, suddenly change. That has never changed by your own activities and that relying on some other. Right? If this is the kind of the wild horse, maybe there's some expert can train and ride on it, but you cannot ride. But this Atma, right? This Atma that you may have born a very kind of powerful man and you conquer many places. And you may fall in the hell realm, in the hungry ghost, the animal many times. But this Atma has never affected. So all this activity that you have done has never changed the self of Atma. Now, with praying to the God, Bhagavan, or with faith in the Bhagavan, even by through the consultations, the single pointed meditations, having the vision of the Bhagavans. So if you have a vision of the Bhagavans, so what you ask, Bhagavan, make me inseparable with you. Right? So make me means referring to the Atma, that I could not change virtue or non-virtue, but I want you to change. Not just change, I want you, right? You to make me yourself. That's almost like, logically, almost not possible.
But in Guru Yoga, that's exactly what we do. We pray to the Guru that our mind be made one with his mind, that we become inseparable from the Guru. And how is this different from what you're describing here?
Guru, Buddha, Guru, Buddha, and your future Buddha. So it's kind of, referring to the same one thing. So if you visualize the Guru, so what is what is that thing that, what is that thing that when you visualize the Guru, what is the aspect or the kind of, the image of the Guru? What is the nature of the image of the Guru? It is the Guru's mind or image of the Guru. It is the Guru's body. So the image of the Guru, right? Image of the Guru, there is no Guru's body there. There's no Guru's mind there. So now this image of the Guru can be, through, if you're visualizing the Guru or if you're creating the image through the realization of dependent arising. So the very wisdom that understands nothing intrinsically exists, everything exists like illusion-like phenomena. And then that illusion-like phenomena, right now I imagining in the form of my Guru, because this image is the most closest to me. Right? So, and that, Guru that dissolves in you or become inseparable, which means, so your wisdom with that imaginations, it become inseparable with you. It's not like Guru real come inside your body. Right? So that's a Guru Yoga means, you are trying to bring the image that is most closest to you. So because the very Guru is the source that you, Guru is the one that who introduced the path of the enlightenment, and Guru is the one that is helped you to, complete your path, or beginning your path, or while you are in the processing in the path. So always because the Guru, so the image of the Guru is most closest to you. So this dependent rising, understanding of the dependent rising, I will create in the form of the image of the Guru. So which can, sometimes we say, one stone kills two birds. So here, this is like that, Tantrayana. So it's perfecting your knowledge, and because of the closeness, sense of closeness, faithful towards the Guru, and there's a blessing from the Guru. So Guru Yoga is like that. Right? If you take everything literally in the face value, and then you may have hope if your Guru is too big. So I want to be inseparable with him. So almost,
Well, here we get into this whole mire. I might use the word mire here. Of seeing the Guru as perfect and pray to make my mind one with you. Those words are used in Guru Yoga, certainly in the Dzogchen tradition. And then even among tantric masters, sometimes you find no explanation, some you find seemingly different explanations of what it means for the Guru to be seen as perfect. You're supposed to see all phenomena this way.
Yeah, the Guru Yoga goes with ultimate. So ultimate practice, generating ultimate Bodhisattva and a Guru Yoga in conventional, ordinary perspective. So ordinary perspective means the Guru means the person. Like human being. So, right? So, and the offering, paying homage, respect, right? These are to cultivate the merits for the individual. So in the sense of generating ultimate bodhicitta, the Guru Yoga means. So there's sometime in Tantrayanas, Tangbyo Gombo means primary protector, Tangbyo Gombo, Tangbyo Sangye, primal Buddha, primordial Buddha, primary protectors. So Guru is pointing to that. So which means the very nature of the very most purest nature of the mind. So once that is turning into the omniscient, so that is you being inseparable with the primary Buddha, primordial Buddha, or primordial Guru. So the Guru is referring to actually nothing but your own essence of the pure nature of the mind. So everything is, I think Chandrakirti again and again is saying everything you refer as object, that object has a two aspect. So ultimate and the ultimate aspect of that object and the conventional aspect of the object. Yeah, so I'll just read this one. Refuting the arising through the fundamental wisdoms, right? Fundamental wisdoms reasonings. If you assert the self-arising, the produce and the which produces, produce and which produces, effect and cause, like that, as well as the action, right, and the agent will become identical. So since there are not the same, these are not the same, we reject the self-arising, for it entails the unwanted consequences explained at length. So this, the Nagarjuna's, from Nagarjuna's root of the middle way. So we have done with Chandrakirti his own reasoning to, to refute or negate self-arising. And then Chandrakirti also used Nagarjuna's logic. So Nagarjuna says, if there is a self-arising, and then effect and cause become, because the very cause that has to be manifest once again as an effect. So everything is coming itself again and again. So then cause and effect become identical, and action and agent will be identical, the same. So there are other faults as well. If you assert the self-arising for the effect, the produce the effect, and that which produces the cause, as well as the act being done, and the agent that does the act will become the identical. Since they are not the same, we should reject self-arising. For to assert it would entail many of the unwanted consequences explained at length. In this text, as well as in the fundamental wisdoms, for example, with respect to the first fault, fundamental wisdom states that the cause and the effect are one. This can never be tenable, for if the cause and the effect are one, the produced and the producer would be one. So if the cause and the effect have identical natures, this is saying then the Father and the Son, then I and its consciousness, I consciousness, will also become one. With respect to the second faults, the fundamental wisdom says, if the fuel were identical with the fire, an agent and actions would be one. There is no fuel producing the fire. There is no fuel that it increases the fire. There's fire that burned by the fuel. So these are all kind of, conventional reality will be untenable. So kind of become not making sense yet. So when refuted thus, the opponent might respond by saying, if the consequences level are the father and his son, and the agent and actions identical in their nature, the answer is yes, I agree. But if the consequences level are they identical in general, the answer then would be no. So there is no such entailment. Nonetheless, because of the reasoning that forces the consequences that if two things are identical in nature, as asserted in the manner they characterize above, so their manifestations would also be identicals. The opponents cannot avoid the above state faults. So therefore, because of the pitfall exposed thus far, those who wish to realize the true truth without distortions must not subscribe to the notion of the self-arising. So we are advised that furthermore, so logically speaking, existence and non-existing of the self-arising are direct opposite. The observing the law of excluded middle, yeah. So which means just, you have only two options. So that is to say that when one is eliminated through the negative determinations, then its opposite is not affirmed through the positive determinations. Such as opposite has two existences. As such, one must accept truth, that there is no self-arising. So Nagarjuna's, I think we have gone through it many times. The conventionally actions, the agents is two separate things. The seer and the act of seeing, smeller and the act of smelling, cutter and what has cut. So these are conventionally as the two separate things. So these, by conceptually distincted two separate entities, one as the cause, one is the effect, one is the action, one is the agents. So they are not really kind of by nature, it's not possible to be identical. Right. So because of the Samkhya schools, they continuously kind of, saying that everything is by nature is one. So if kind of, if with this kind of the belief, with this kind of, belief, I think beliefs is right. And then it may turns you to saying the action and the agents, although they are seemingly separate, and cause and effect, and conventionally or seemingly separate, by ultimately they are one. So which means there's a so what we see is the separate, what we understood as separate is in my wrong perceptions. So what is the ultimate is everything is not separate, everything is one. So Chandrakirti is saying that's very, very, totally against the conventional reality. So you're going beyond the, common sense. So I think this continues this the kind of you're coming back to the same point. What does that mean of continuities? What is the meaning of transformations? So everything is, transforming. Transforming means not transferring. The cause is not transferring to the state of the effect. Effect is the very effect is not transferred from the cause. It's not coming from the state of cause. But one sees another manifest. That is the transformations. So that transformations from this and what we call is impermanent. This impermanence, the transformation of the past and the futures, impermanence is not really directly perceptible for the sensual perceptions, not even for the mind that is constantly going after the imaginations. So you have to come, a little bit, dig into the reality, and then you will see impermanence means transformations. Transformation means continuities. Continuity means continuity, one past and another manifest. One past and another manifest. The transformation of the past and the futures. It's just impermanence means expression of activity or the expression of changes from the past to the future. So this is what Prasangika school, trying to point out. So if you understand that there is no, there's no Atma, so there's no permanent soul or I. So with no permanent self, no permanent I, no permanent self, but still you are not really rejecting continuities. Right? From the milk to the yogurt, seed to the sprout. So the effect and what has produced as an effect, that effect is not identical with the cause. Right? So although they are not same, they are not different, the cause and effect are not the same. Right? It's not the same in the sense the color, the taste, tactilities, potencies, in all, because whatever the taste in the seed is not necessarily continuously remaining for the sprout, because like Indian gooseberries, the seed and the trees always has a kind of nature of giving the sourness on but editing the milk, right? And that changes the taste of the berry, right? So, which means things are always changing. Things do not remain as past. So still, things are disintegrating and changing does not mean there is any kind of entity or any kind of tiniest kind of the particles that constantly remaining. It is impossible because things ceased born. See
why you have to contemplate this forever.
So you want the Indian gooseberry to plant? So
yeah, I want to do an experiment. One with milk, one without milk.
So once we pass the inflations, then we can do it. Right now, everything's price is going up. So any other questions now? Any questions?
Questioned out. But I wish you a good trip.
Oh,
It's an opportunity to say that.
My intrinsic eye is going. I think this is kind of, the Prasanga school, the unique thing is this. No intrinsic, but still there's the function of the cause and effect. Nothing inherently exists, but the cause and effect, the law in the cause and effect is a convention and is the reality. So other school of thought within Buddhist school or non-Buddhist school, so once they kind of, thinking about negating any intrinsic nature means denying everything. So why it's just kind of the different idea, different philosophical point of views. It's not just kind of school of thought. It is all about Buddha means being awakened to reality as it is. So to become the Buddha, to become the awakened one, and you have to understand what is the reality as it is. So that's why there's many school of thoughts continuously kind of debating back and forth. So they're all trying to understand. Yeah. So 3 minutes. Logan, questions? So no question then. Let's start. Chanju Simjo Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jeju, Gevanyaba, Mevanya, Kone Kondo, Tonye Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jeju, Gevanyaba, Mevanya, Kone Kondo, Pama Simjan Tamjin, Dedan Denju, Nendro Tamje, Tado Tonga, Chanju Simba, Kanda Suju, Tadakunja, Mono Doju, Karira Voko Vishinga, Panda, the woman, June.
May the precious body mind not yet born rise and grow. May the born have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born rise and grow. May the born have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all dwelling manifestation beings have all happiness. May all law realms be empty forever. Wherever there are Bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all health and happiness. O powerful Chinese intelligence, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much.